Good day. My name is Natalia Praskurenko, and I'm project manager in Charitable Foundation, Right to Protection, and I'm coordinating project on strengthening stability and social cohesion in Ukraine. And I really would like to thank you that you are interested in our event, and also you are interested in social cohesion and peacebuilding topics regarding Ukraine. And I just want to tell like a few words about our organization, what we are doing in Ukraine. So R2P is a leading human rights organization that works comprehensively to solve problems related to forced displacement and migration, their causes and consequences. And now we working, I guess, like in 10 directions. Like we are providing legal aid to internally displaced people, also protection monitoring, social protection, advocacy, cash assistance, in-kind assistance, mental health and psychological support, legal assistance to refugees, legal assistance to stateless persons, and also it's a kind of new direction for us, disaster risk reduction. We are covering almost all region in Ukraine, and like we work in more than 20 regions now, and we have quite a big team. Like 980 specialists that are working all over Ukraine, and now also we have more than 44 projects. And yeah, it's working. So let's start with research presentation. Right, last year during September, October, and November, Right to Protection together with information agency InfoSapiens, and also together with independent dialogue facilitators conducted research on relationship practice, conflicts, and trigger themes among Ukrainians, IDPs, and host communities, as well as returnees and home communities. And firstly, what I want to say that Ukrainian society strongly united and mobilized after the full-scale invasion, and it still remains united. However, due to the different reasons, due to high level of stress, various traumas, lack of material and psychological resources, a large number of challenges, the presence of different cultural backgrounds, and also identity backgrounds. So all this leads to the emergence of points of tensions and conflicts in Ukrainian communities. Therefore, we wanted to understand what potentially conflicting situation arise or may arise, and decide what actually we can do and what could be done to resolve or prevent these conflicts. So probably you understood right from the name of the research that we had like 4 target audience for to study. There are internally displaced persons, host communities, returnees, and home communities. And everyone knows who IDPs are, but I guess I need to explain whom we mean by returnees. Returnees, these are those Ukrainians who left their home city, home gromada due to active hostilities. And so they displaced to more safe cities inside Ukraine or abroad. But after they came back, when the situation became better in their hromadas. And so home communities, these are those people, those are those representative home communities, it's communities where the returnees came back. We had like two stages of research, qualitative and quantitative researches. First, we conducted focus group discussion to generate hypotheses, which were then tested in quantitative study. In total, 10 online focus group discussions and 1,242 personal interviews were conducted. And here's a bit information about the geography of our research. So interviews with IDPs and host communities, mostly we conducted on west part of Ukraine and the central part of Ukraine, particularly in Lьвівська, Івано-Франківська, Тернопільська, Хмельницька, Рівненська, Кіровоградська, Полтавська, and Dnipropetrovska Oblast. You can see it like in rose dots. I mark it in rose dots. And interviews between with returnees and home communities we conducted in North Oblast of Ukraine. You could see it, I mark it with blue dots, like Житомирська, Київська, Чернігівська, and Сумська Oblast. A review of the results of qualitative and quantitative sociological research makes it possible to outline certain social phenomena, divisions that appeared in Ukrainian society in connection with a full-scale war or became more acute because they existed from the past. So I'm going to tell more about conflicts that we identified. In my presentation, I classified them by courses. And here's already like a disclaimer, right? So division by courses is quite arbitrary because each specific example of a conflict may have several reasons, or even as an exemption may have like totally other reasons. But in general, the picture is as follows. And the first in my presentation here is a request for justice in communities. And here I also would like to single out such subgroups as unfair distribution of resources and unfair sharing of responsibility. And the second global cause of conflicts is the clash of different identities. And this group also includes cultural and value conflicts. Let's move on. Now I will talk in a little more detail about each group of social conflicts. The first one is unfair distribution of resources. And just to make it more concrete, I would like to provide some examples that our respondents gave it to us. Some examples of conflicts between IDPs and host communities. IDPs were evicted from the premises of schools and kindergartens because of the beginning of the academic year. Probably no other accommodation was provided. Lack of housing, high housing prices create conflict situations involving IDPs, accusing IDPs of seeking assistance to which they are not entitled. A limited amount of assistance, for example, there is assistance for 100 people per day, and there are significantly more willing ones. There are cases that the sets of assistance are incomplete. There are rumors in representatives of that representatives of the authorities in the city stole humanitarian aid, and or it did not come to the city in full. There is no help for the needy categories from the host communities. And also volunteers burn out, get tired, stop working. And also some examples of conflicts between returnees and local communities. Accusing returnees of social tourism, that they left for the sake of payments and humanitarian aid, and not because of danger. Returnees don't receive assistance even when they really need it. A lack of information. There was no accurate information about who and what kind of assistance can be received. Volunteers are accused of low quality assistance, that they distribute junk. Volunteers cannot always get support in the community, find the necessary premises for work and assistance providing. Also, unfair distribution. There are people who received help many times, and there are those who did not receive it at all. And elderly people with disabilities cannot stand in queues, therefore they don't receive any assistance. If we draw some conclusions here, like we can see that the basis for such conflicts are inefficient distribution of resources, lack of trust for quality and coordinated distribution of resources. In most cases, there is a lack of coordination between volunteer organizations, donors, and the authorities. And also, there is no comprehensive and detailed understanding of existing needs and forecasting of needs. And also, I think one of the most important problem is lack of communication regarding the rules of interaction in communities. What I mean here is that everyone can have their own idea of fairness. So it's important to explain who has right to what. And let's move on. We have, so what's need to be done, right? What's need to be done to resolve these conflicts or to prevent them? And definitely we need to work with causes of the challenges, and it's important to establish of justice, improve communication, and restoration of trust. And it's like a global task, right? Like a meta task for us. And we also have some more concrete ideas, proposals, what could be done. Like, first of all, we could provide basic living conditions for IDPs and local residents, including social housing, financial and humanitarian assistance to families in need. Maintain social justice, equal access of all groups to community services and resources. It's also important to study the needs of different groups and provide assistance as needed. We also could attract grants for the development of sorry, this word, it's difficult to pronounce for me, entrepreneurship. There are now a lot of such grants for IDPs, create jobs and attract investments in the community, including grant funds. And also it's important right now to focus on the development of the local attractiveness of the regions already now, namely the provision of energy infrastructure, medical care and education systems as priorities. Also, there are a lot of things that could be done in public sector. For example, like to ensure the efficient organization of the work of humanitarian centers, to improve the coordination and cooperation of government agencies, national NGOs and international NGOs, attract grants and implement useful social and business projects in this community, and involve IDPs in voluntary projects and paid public works after the initial period of adaptation. And yes, let's move on. And here's other groups of conflicts. Conflicts due to different identities. Let me remind you that this group also includes value, cultural, language conflicts due to different habits and unspoken rules of behavior. At the beginning, I will also give a few specific cases, and then we will analyze them. Some just example of conflict, of cultural conflicts and identity conflicts between IDPs and host communities. Conflicts due to the Russian language and culture, and accusations by local residents of IDPs that they are responsible for the war because they were not sufficiently pro-Ukrainian. The ideological confrontation between the West and the East is intensifying. Stereotypes and accusations can become the basis for conflicts. And also some examples of conflicts between returnees and local communities. Conflicts due to language, which language is correct to speak. Conflicts due to the Russian and Ukrainian churches. The issue of transition to the Ukrainian church in the community. And here it's important to say that it does not directly concern returnees, but all residents in communities. And other type of conflicts is conflicts due to different experience of living in the war. So people who left don't understand that life in the city has changed. And again, I remind you that these examples of the conflict that our respondents give it to us. So let's analyze each subgroups. And the first one is like cultural conflicts due to different cultural backgrounds. Here it's worth noting that before the war, there was some split in Ukrainian society between representatives of West and East, which was deliberately provoked by political forces. Certain stereotypes were formed about Ukrainians from the East and Ukrainians from the West. At present, the situation is changing, which in the historical perspective, and this is my point of view, can remove this division. Because many people from the East, and not only from the East, but also from the South and North, move within borders of Ukraine. And mainly they go to the west of Ukraine. That is, conditions have now arisen where Ukrainians from different parts communicate and adopt each other's culture and values. But of course, at this stage, such clashes of different cultures, such clashes of different cultures lead to conflicts. And it's but it's also important to to say that the division into West and East is, of course, a simplification, because in fact, each region, each town, each village is unique and may have its own specifics regarding culture, traditions, and customs. And this is something that is important to consider when we will, during implementation, some projects in Ukraine, and especially peace building projects. Sorry. So other subgroups is conflicts due to different experience of living in war. What I want to say here, that the war formed new identities, such as the identities of those who live in the territory where hostilities took place, and those who did not receive such an experience, those who were evacuated abroad or in other region of Ukraine, those who moved from the village to the city and vice versa, those who whose close husbands are fighting at the front, and those whose husbands are deliberately hiding from the possible mobilization. It all affects how we feel and how we interact with others. Practically, it changes us and our identity. To unite Ukrainians and to ensure that we all live in peace will be one of the priority tasks after our victory. And I think we should already start to do it. And again, right, what we propose, how we could prevent this conflict or how we could resolve this conflict. But identity conflicts are painful and require time to analyze and work with them. But for the sake of consolidation of Ukrainian society, the topic of identity should become one of the key issues in further peace-making, peace-building practices. And it's also important to start with education and some educational programs. We need to spread educational information about non-violent communication, non-discrimination, to increase the culture of communication, to create educational hubs that could engage in educational work, as well as help in writing, receiving the implementing grants for IDPs and other target audience, to involve mass media in educational work in matters of understanding in communities, work with children and youth on the topic of understanding in kindergarten, schools, and universities. Also, we propose some activities with a peace-building dialogue that could be also implemented, like conduct dialogues for understanding between different groups of local residents and IDPs, the authorities, and the territorial community regarding language, religious issues, and other hot topics, as an example, in a format similar of focus group discussions. To hold cultural, but it's important to say that this dialogue, it should be well prepared, like, and we should invite professional facilitator. And also we should consider timing. Is it appropriate to organize this kind of peace-building dialogue right now or not? Because the first our rule, right, not to harm, and this like important. So other activities, it's to hold cultural events and sports, as well as public events in the community, which would promote informal communication between community residents, IDPs, and returnees, involve young people in community, activists, young people are better able to resolve conflicts, find understanding, because they have fewer stereotypes and more tolerant. And it also worth noting the emotional state of Ukrainians. Stress and trauma only increase the level of conflict in society. Here we can see the statistics of how the emotional state of our respondents changed after the start of full-scale invasion. And this should be taken also into account when we are implementing various projects in communities, and especially peacebuilding projects. So here also various activities to support psychological state need to be implemented. My last slide, my last point, what I would like to say, that we know that trust in each other is one of the most unifying characteristic, while a large number of respondents unfortunately feel a loss of trust. And obviously this is the gap, the feeling of which can have the most positive effect on both the social cohesion and the emotional state of Ukrainians. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening to me. And I give floor to Tanya Kalinichenko.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia, and hello to everyone who joined our presentation. And I'm really pleased to give a floor to Dr. Tatiana Kiselova, who will react and discuss not only the research, but also the trends of peace building in Ukraine today. So, Tatiana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Tatiana asked me before to introduce myself in more details. I'm currently associate professor at Kyiv Mohyla Academy and senior research fellow at Swiss Peace Basel in Switzerland. I was asked by colleagues to provide the feedback for the research as a researcher for the research. And overall, I think the study is very valuable, given that this is the first such attempt to produce something in public. Many organizations are currently trying this social cohesion field, but most of the attempts are not public. People do different types of feasibility studies. So really, we should thank R2P and their efforts to make this public. Another very positive approach in this study was the differentiation between categories of IDPs and returnees. This is becoming increasingly important for today's Ukraine as more people return. The only thing I would be interested to actually know what was indeed the difference between the IDPs' perceptions of conflicts and returnees' perceptions of the conflicts. I haven't seen this in presentation, and yeah, maybe I need to read more carefully the report, but this is my question, because we will also have questions and answers. Then in terms of more critical things, one important note for all international organizations, especially those who are not specializing who are not locals and not specializing in peace building, is that quantitative methodology is very tricky methodology. Quite often you have a very good good methods and people who are very experienced in conducting sociological polls and market and research. But the problem is the first stage when you predefine the categories and the qualitative stage. So here at the qualitative stage, we strongly recommend to involve local mediation, dialogue, and peace-building experts in actual conducting the research rather than consulting post factum. This makes a huge difference because if you get wrong category, you end up with the wrong data. Yeah, so the avoidance of the conflicts, for example, is not is nothing special about Ukrainian society. Avoidance is a dominant conflict response style in all societies, including the American societies. A lot of research was done on that, so that's not a big surprise. So we do not come to people and ask, do you have conflicts or what type of conflicts you have? You need to use different categories. In terms of the causes of the conflicts, I think the conclusions should be more careful in the wordings because you can show this report to internationals or to ourselves as experts, but that was also quite unclear, the target audience of your recommendations. So if you want to show this to the government, obviously different language should be used, but also if you say that the primarily causes of the conflicts on the ground is unfair distribution of resources, and then try to think what it means. That means all resources in the whole of Ukraine, because you have a representative study, are unfairly distributed, which cannot be the fact. So what the fact is that the people perceive it as unfairly distributed. So it's the cause is actually the perception of resources as being unfairly distributed. That makes a difference. In terms of the overall methodology, there are two things which I personally, with all my degrees and teaching methodology of research at different universities, I'm not happy about is the gap. There are two types of gaps in such research. So people do assessment of problems on the ground, which is great. I mean, this is very valuable data. But then they infer the need for interventions out of these problems. Then the question is, how do you do this? So if you show this data to a different expert, he or she will come with different types of interventions. I mean, if I would look at this data on the problems, I would probably suggest different interventions. So there is obviously a gap in the methodology, but this is not, this is like overall gap. Yeah, we do have this problem in Ukraine, maybe in other countries. So you see the problems and you quickly jump to recommend interventions, but the basis of these interventions are fairly unclear. I suggest there might be several, there might be another gap, which can then bring us to this resolution of the problem of the gaps. When you recommend interventions, you can do it subjectively, like, okay, I'm an expert, I see the problems, I think these interventions are effective. Number two, you can see the problem, you can then see what were the previous interventions. And this is another gap, because when I look at such type of research, it actually it actually shows nothing about the work which has been done for the last 8 years. So we don't know what interventions were effective and efficient before. So it's basically like we started from the scratch. For 8 years, there was a really big efforts of mediators and dialogue facilitators, but also of many other activists to conduct different types of dialogues. So now we suggest we do community dialogues as if it is from scratch. This cannot be the case. The community dialogues have been done for 8 years, and there is nothing new in this. And there were so many problems with community dialogues that this particular intervention should be specified. Yeah, and so I basically suggest when people assess the problems and the needs and try to incur what types of interventions they do, they need to assess the past interventions and the existing capacities of those who are working on the ground. The third gap is let me see. Yeah, the third gap, I think, which is actually quite, quite important and may lead to different interpretations of these recommendations. I do not think anyone can recommend any type of interventions for the Ukraine as a whole. So if you recommend community dialogues, then you try to apply community dialogues to newly liberated territories in Kherson. This is nonsense. You cannot do community dialogue in Kherson right now. Yes, but you can do community dialogue, for example, in the West. Ukraine is so different now. When we did our research, there were at least 5 different territories. So actually, I do not believe you can do general recommendations without referral to any specific territory. So that's another gap. Yeah, so the last thing, what really also needs to be considered, the type of recommendations that people do, they refer to different fields. For example, to coordinate humanitarian aid, right? Well, this was unclear from the very beginning whether your recommendations concern the peace building interventions or overall recommendations, because if we, for example, recommend coordinating humanitarian aid, again, going to the capacities which already exist, isn't this something which is done by humanitarian clusters? Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. Now this is a question. So if this is not done by humanitarian aid organizations, why peace builders should step in? Yeah, right. So this distinction between different fields, humanitarian development, peace building, I know it's unclear because conceptually the fields are unclear. But perhaps we need to think about differentiating peace building field. This is something which Ukrainian mediators and dialogue facilitators are currently doing. This is the last gap, but it's conceptual and quite difficult to distinguish. This is something I admit. But coming back to the value of this research, I do think it is very valuable study, but I think its value will increase even further when other studies will come out. And for example, we will soon have the new score on social index on social cohesion. It has now a new name, don't remember how they call it now. But what would be, for example, interesting and very, very valuable if we compare results of your study with the score and see whether there might be some connections or whether they would validate some of your findings. So overall, congratulations to R2P, because this is a first step in building up this body of evidence-based expert knowledge, which I'm sure will increase in Ukraine and will provide enormously valuable evidence for the policy.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tatiana. And probably I will start some parts of comments because Natalia gets more, I suppose. But I was involved in research as consultant and also as dialogue facilitator in the field. And I would like to stress several points. Of course, as soon as it was pilot research and it was done for internal requests for R2P in the very beginning, they just decided to share the results. And I'm really glad that at least we've got several research and we can compare, and with core especially, because sometimes I was lacking more details in core on what's going on places. So sure, I will start probably with the last comment on humanitarian aid. As soon as I was working in different communities since the very beginning of a full-scale invasion, unfortunately it's not coordinated. And as a peace builder in the field, I really think why peace building should be there, because it would be possible to provide conflict-sensitive approach into humanitarian aid, and also to be those leaders who are trying to fix this problem as soon as a lot of resources are still coming to communities, and they're not, all of them are based on needs assessment. And sometimes we really feel the lack of understanding where should end crisis intervention of humanitarian funds, and we should start developing other projects too. So it's, for me, it's like a part of peace building in general. And it's also stress another issue of our expert community of peace builders, dialogue facilitators, and mediators in Ukraine, because capacities of peace building as well as concept of peace building in Ukraine is not clear today. Some people, peace building is like a traitor narrative. So it seems like negotiations with Russia. For others, it's like working only with territorial communities. And for others, it's something about dialogue only. So definitely it would be really great if we can have a conceptualized vision of peace building in future. And also to be in this approach of adaptive methodology for local interventions, because really we have 8 years of full types of different interventions on the ground, and really like get a good expertise in the field. But it's really a time to reflect and also to adapt to circumstances on the places which are changing really quickly. So it's not possible even to think in 1 year perspective or half-year perspective, because everything can change tomorrow. And also, I would say that not only coordination of resources is available now on the places, and of course for different communities which are liberated territories which were not occupied and etc., but also security issues. And I would say that we could also start like those community dialogues with understanding what security means, because sometimes for people it's not clear today. And what do we mean? Only actions by police, or just a general culture of dialogue, or economical growth and possibilities to work, and etc. So that's in general my comments, and I give floor to Natalia, and then we will be happy to open discussion. And just to remind you, if you got question, you can rather unmute yourself and tell them, or just write in a chat. So Natalia, please.
Yeah, thank you both, Tanya, and thank you, Tatiana Kiselova, for such comprehensive feedback. And it's really important to hear all of these, right? Because we did a lot of work, and right now we are like sure in our perspective of you, and it's important to receive some other perspectives, right? Is it useful or not useful? And Tatiana, the first, your question was about what is the difference between IDPs, internally displaced people, and returnees. So these are actually two different groups of people, and really with, I think, different experience of living in war. So if IDPs, like again, according to our research, they like more focus on some cultural issues between them, between like IDPs and between host communities, and they like this type of conflicts more visible for them, like language and some religion issues, and for example, but for returnees, what is more like visible, what kind of conflicts? It's like conflicts with their home communities, because they had also the other experience of living in war. So it's like more conflicts between clashes between new identities, right? Because some home community representative of home communities, they experience maybe living in active hostilities, and maybe some were living during occupation, etc. So they already created some habits and how they should live in war. For example, they think that it's not appropriate time to have a party or to listen to music, etc. But maybe returnees like has other opinion, and the clashes. So like we notice that it's like more clashes between new identities created during the war, but also yes, cultural conflicts is here also between returnees and home communities, because for example, also we notice that those people who were living during this active phase of war, they became more radical in terms of to be more pro-Ukrainian, right? They switched to Ukrainian, but someone switched to Ukrainian, switched to Ukrainian culture more. So it's also like clashes, right? Should we speak Russian or Ukrainian, etc. And also yes, some maybe what if, so for example, if we come back, what is the difference between IDPs and returnees? Like right now, everyone like NGOs and international NGOs, they have like a list of eligibilities for it to receive to share assistance, to give assistance, and normally like they use this list. For example, they give assistance to IDPs, but returnees, it's not like a group to whom they give assistance. Sorry for my English. I'm trying to my best to explain. So, and it's like a conflict that returnees don't have like any right for this assistance. And it's like the GLS, why, for example, IDPs in my communities have this right and me not. So these kind of differences. But honestly, we didn't have like it was not our purpose to study these differences, right? But it's just like what I noticed during the research. And yes, and regarding also your comment that it was kind of general, right? Our general suggestions, what could be done. But obviously, as I also told in my presentation, that it could not be applicable in each region in Ukraine, and each region in Ukraine right now, like before the full scale of Envision, we had like some specifics in each region, right? And right now it's even more. So definitely, if we are planning to implement some projects, like especially peace building projects, first of all, we need to do like a double research in a specific region and a specific city and even a specific village to understand what was there and what is going on there, because some relationship in Hromada, in community, could be totally different, even if it's like it could be one region, but for example, even one city, but one region was occupied and others not. So it's everything should be checked, and before we will implement any project or activities, especially peace building ones. Yeah, but really thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia and Tatiana. And now we are opening the floor for comments and questions. So please, if you feel free, you can unmute yourself or rather write a question or comment. And maybe if you would like to share something that's also valuable, and maybe another data, ideas, or research. Yeah, please, Hannah.
Yeah, hi everybody. Yeah, I'm without camera because I'm sick today, so but I'm still with you. Yeah, and I was just to want also to comment a little about coordination, because Caritas is like a triple nexus organization, as it's why, and we are also in a like close touch with clusters. We can say that we have some coordination, but as far as we go to community level and to lower level, this coordination will be absent, of course, because it's really hard to coordinate like on the all levels, all of humanitarian aid. Just a small question. And also Natalia, thank you a lot for your presentation and for research. Yeah, it's like really a first step from for our future. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. And actually about coordination on places, it was also about between different organizations. And as soon as we observed it on the ground, so yeah, it's valuable that at least Caritas knows what to do in different communities, but it would be really great to communicate with different organizations. At least for some reason, it's really hard sometimes to organize. Yeah, colleagues, please. We still get some time if you would like to ask something or comment. And I would also remind that we will send all the materials and recording as soon as presentation stops. Yeah, please. You got any?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah? Hello.
Hi, Tatiana. Hi, Natalia. Thank you so much for a very interesting presentation. I am actually working with R2P in Lviv. So my counterpart is Ivana Harris. We Peace in Japan has a project with you. So we are one of the 44 projects I guess you have. And then we are particularly in Lviv. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing your results. And then we are so pleased to know R2P, our partner, is so proactive, not only humanitarian area, but also peace building area. And then it's so, how to say, promising, relieved. And then I'm so hopeful that even our projects, I can see a lot we can implement immediately from what you have studied, because we are focusing on we don't use the word dialogue, but the MHPSS and legal aid are provided for host communities as well. So recently we heard that the host community population have totally different needs or contents they need to be focused by psychologists, right? So for example, I was quite, that was eye-opening for me to just hear from Ivana that, for example, IDP needs to focus on a new life. However, host community population, it's not that, it's not new life, still continuation, but they have to accommodate IDP. So I can really feel the seeds of conflicts, throughout these 10 months, almost 12 months. Oh my gosh. So yeah, so I really appreciate that you have launched this study, and then I'm sure you are implementing some. I know the limitation of emergency responses. We cannot be, well prepared. Our analysis tend to be shallow, and then our humanitarian coordination tend to attend where looks easy to access, right? So as you precisely said, security or safety is an issue, and then how to make it, as the professor said, how to try to nourish the perception. Controlling perception is really, really difficult and tricky part. So not using the word controlling is not appropriate, but how to try to bring more fairness or justice or transparency to projects. That's actually on us meaning as humanitarian actors. That is really our mission, to make it as much as accountable and transparent. So in many senses, it's really good learning for me to know more about the Ukrainian society. So big appreciation, congratulations for your study. And then I'm looking forward to further working with R2P. Thank you so much.
Well, what I just want to say, thank you to everyone for your interest, that you're interested in this topic, right? And we said today a lot that it was like first attempt, first step in peace building, and honestly, for me, it was really challenging because at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I saw that peace building probably it's definitely not time, and only like at the beginning of the war, even I switched to humanitarian work, and I also just was in voluntary hub and provide humanitarian assistance to people in need here where I am right now. But there are more and more feelings that peace building really needed here in Ukraine, and because it's also important to be united for us, to be mobilized in front of also our joint enemy. And peace building could help to be more stronger. And I hope that I'm sure that we will continue in this direction, and hopefully like our next step will be just concrete peace building activity, and we will keep you updated about our work. And really just thank you that you are also interested in topic of social cohesion and peace building in Ukraine.
So thank you. Tatiana, do you want to add something?
No, I just wanted again to thank R2P, and I think such courageous people like Natalia and other colleagues should be supported, because it does take courage to talk about peace and peace building during the war. But we also need to, as Tatiana said, to reconceptualize classic approaches to peace building, because this is a unique conflict, the war of aggression, and it needs new and special approaches to peace building.
Thank you everyone for coming, and let's keep updated about the research results and other research done, and we'll keep in touch with you. Please check your email and also R2P Facebook page for any additional information. Thank you for coming, and have a nice evening.